by Dr. Levi Nudu. He's a political analyst, joins us live from Johannesburg. Thank you very much, Doctor, for joining us. Welcome to NewsX World. Doctor, what more can you tell us about South Africa's unchanged, unmoved stance about this case?
Good day to you, and indeed good day to the viewers at home. South Africa has got its own bad history. The history of suppression of human rights, the history of segregation, and indeed the history where the people were treated differently. As South Africa, after 1994, adopted a principle that is based on human rights, that is based on solidarity for those that are oppressed, ill-treated and exploited. And of course, South Africa associated herself with all the people that are the victims of human rights abuses. And that is why South Africa associated herself with the people of Palestine. Our stance as South Africa has always been based on ensuring that there is no exploitation of one group by the other. And indeed, when South African government saw what was happening in Palestine, they took a firm stand, and not just a stand, but having to take the matter to the ICJ. Part of the healing, even though there are issues that relates to peace deals and the cessation of the war, is that there should be a process of healing as articulated by the President of South Africa. And I think South Africa, what they're doing is to continuously stand firm on what has been the position of South Africa for quite some time.
And Doctor, as you've mentioned, the history behind and how South Africa sees these cases, what are your thoughts on the potential impact of South Africa's case at the International Court of Justice in terms of accountability as well as international justice for these war crimes?
Our international institutions that are created to ensure that human abuses have to come to an end, that are created to ensure that there is peace and stability, should be seen to be functional. And not only to be functional, but they should also have the muscle to be able to enforce what appears to be wrong. South Africa's stance, in my view, is to say that when there is wrongdoing that is happening, South Africa has to stand firm and not only do it for the purposes of being a winner, but do that for the purposes of ensuring that they make a statement and also to ensure that such things are exposed as wrong and that they should not continue to happen. That is the basis in which South Africa is coming in. And my view is that it is the approach that they expect other countries to follow, because human rights abuses and any form of suppression and exploitation is something that should never be allowed to happen.
And Dr. Levi, last but not least, do you think this will influence other African nations currently suffering, such as Sudan, South Sudan, Uganda, not Uganda, but DRC and Rwanda in supporting this stance on Israel-Palestine conflict?
The Deputy President of South Africa, Mr. Paul Mashatile, last week visited South Sudan. Part of the mission why he visited Sudan was also to ensure that any form of conflict, human rights abuses, and indeed exploitation of the people has to come to an end. Also to do sharing about our own experiences as South Africa in terms of how we've actually been able to transverse and move forward. My view is that all countries that appears to be participating in human rights abuses and indeed wrongdoing should also join hands and ensure that such has to come to an end, because part of the liberation and democracy is to ensure that any form of exploitation and abuse has to come to an end so that the citizens of the world are able to live freely without any form of oppression and exploitation.
With that, I would like to thank our guest, Dr. Levi Nudu, for joining us and sharing that insight all the way from Johannesburg. Thank you very much. Now we move on and we stay in Africa. A series of drone attacks targeted the Sudanese capital, Khartoum, for multiple hours. The Sudanese military has said that the army had shot down most of the drones, which targeted 2 army bases in the capital's northwest. Since April 2023, Sudan's army has been at war with the Paramilitary Rapid Support Forces, known as RSF, who have regularly attacked army positions using drones. An eyewitnesses in Omar Duran, part of Greater Khartoum, has stated that they saw drones flying over the city and heard loud explosions coming from the north through the night. The Sudan Shield Forces, an armed group allied with the army, has stated that 2 of its members were killed by a drone in the East Nile district of Khartoum. Now for this discussion, we welcome Abdullah Hussein. He's a journalist, joins us live from Sudan. Thank you very much, Abdullah, for joining us. Welcome to NewsX World. Now, with the recent drone attacks targeting Sudan's capital, how do you assess the evolving security situation in the country?
Yes. First of all, thank you so much for having me on NewsX. What we're seeing now is a continuation of the RSF's, the paramilitary long-standing strategy of targeting vital infrastructure and civilian areas to spread fear and disrupt daily life. And I believe that it's not to achieve any real military objectives on the ground. The latest wave of drone strikes, which hit Idba Bikr, it's a village in the eastern part of Khartoum, the capital of Sudan, and also at Dabba in the northern state. It was yesterday, and it clearly reflects this idea. These attacks killed 7 civilians, including a doctor and his son in eastern parts of Khartoum, and injured others. So the same pattern appeared before when the RSF, the paramilitary rapid support forces, used such drone attacks to attack power stations and fuel depots in different parts and different states of the country, also in different cities, like Afbara in the River Nile state, also Port Sudan in the eastern part of the country, and also including Omdurman in the capital and Bahri also. They are trying to paralyze the capital's basic services. However, the Sudanese armed forces staff responded as usual. Most of the drones, and it's a suicidal drone type, were shot down before even reaching their intended targets. The Army's ground-based air defense units proved once again that Khartoum remains under firm control and under the current government.
And Abdullah, given the Sudanese military reportedly shot down most of these drones, how prepared do you think the country's military is in defending against these types of aerial threats, and what impact might this have on civilian safety?
Yes, it's quite an issue, of course. The situation is quite serious, but I believe it's not out of control. The RSF's reliance on drones shows their desperation, not a dominance. The Sudanese armed forces maintains the upper hand in this equation, both in defending the capital and also preventing the RSF from achieving any meaningful breakthroughs. And I believe this is their agendas. The army is trying hard enough to try and preserve lives and try to protect civilians across the country. These attacks tell us that the RSF is shifting deeper into unconventional and destructive warfare and moving away from open battles to targeted drone strikes, which is meant to damage infrastructure and terrorize civilians across the country. The RSF now holds several battlegrounds to their own control. They have most of the Darfur region, excluding Al Fasher, of course, which is still besieged in the western part of the country. We have seen this before in Omdurman city, when drones were sent toward the Wadi Sayidna military base, one of the basic and one of the huge bases in the country were sent toward the Wadi Sayidna military base, and some of the power stations in the capital. And at that time, it caused a blackout in the entire capital. We saw it again in El Fasher, the PCH city, where the RSF drones bombed a civilian shelter, killed over 50 people, mostly women and children. And now we are seeing that again across Khartoum and the northern regions, where civilian homes and public facilities have become the main target.
With that, I would like to thank our guest, Abdullah Hussein, for joining us and sharing your insight as a journalist from Sudan. Thank you very much. Now we move on and we stay in Madagascar, Africa, sorry. The CAPSAT military unit has taken power in Madagascar after the National Assembly has voted to impeach President Andry Rajoelina for desertion of duty. The president's impeachment was passed with 130 votes in favor, well above the two-thirds constitutional threshold required in the 163-member chamber. The head of the CAPSAT unit has declared that they have taken power and that the unit will set up a committee composed of officers from the army, gendarmerie, and national force. Police. Rajoelina had refused to step down despite escalating Gen Z demonstrations demanding his resignation and widespread defections in the army. The protests began on September 25th and reached a pivotal point last week when soldiers and security forces, including CAPSAT, joined the demonstrators and called for the president and other government ministers to step down. CAPSAT played a major role back in the 2009 coup that first brought Rajoelina to power. Now for this discussion, we're joined by Osaniyin Taiwo. He's a policy and strategic implementation expert, joins us live from Abuja. Thank you very much, Taiwo, for joining us. Welcome to NewsX World. Now, what more can you tell us about this, what's ongoing in Madagascar?
Thank you for having me on NewsX. Unfortunately, as I stated, I think yesterday when I was on your program, I said that it's unfortunate that African leaders have always and would always try to make the citizens of the countries which they lead to actually become a bone in the truth. And what do I mean by this is because they underperform. They not only underperform, they think that actualizing power or in position of power gives them any right and every right to actually trample on the citizens' rights and perform low based on their campaign promises and what have you. But the most unfortunate part of it is that today African countries are beginning to celebrate military dictatorship and military government like the light after the tunnel, which doesn't also speak rightly of the fact that military should actually take over any state of Africa. While stated, what also very critical to understand that there might be wins, there might be little wins in the ways on which the military takes over power, and which we've seen in some countries like Burkina Faso, like Chad. But Madagascar entering this stream now, it's actually a very critical position for countries in the Southern Africa region. And this is going to be like a continual trend. And African countries will think that is the opportunity for them to actually get liberation from their elected political leaders. But that is not the way forward. The way forward will be that I would still advise the people of Madagascar to go back to the poll, get a credible leader that they believe in, even though Rajoelina has been impeached or has been ousted from power, and get a leader that would actually sink into the mind. Unfortunately, and the unfortunate part is that Africa get the leaders they deserve. Because what? The people themselves, the people of Africa do not even really know the kind of leaders they want.
And Taiwo, if you can tell us, given the role of military units like CAPSAT in Madagascar's past, how do you see this latest political shift affecting the relationship between the military and civilian leadership, particularly in Madagascar?
So what we're going to have is we're still going to have a thorough political shift. Like there's not going to be a cordiality between the military and the people. Uh, there might just be kind of leadership stability for a moment or for a period of time. It might not be so long, but the honest truth is that there will still be high level of political tension. There's high level of development. There's high level of underdevelopment, pardon me. There will be high level of even security, because this is now going to be an opportunity for extensive looting. It's going to be an opportunity for the duration of the country's fabric of governance. And this is also going to lead to a very critical situation whereby even the military will try to want to governize the state and ensure that things are going smoothly. But the honest truth is this: the citizens would not and may not even trust the incoming military government.
With that, I would like to thank Osanyin Taiwo for sharing that insight. Please stay with us as we come back to you for our next news as well. Meanwhile, the streets of Madagascar's capital, Antananarivo, are largely quiet as residents have returned to their daily routines following weeks of protests that saw a military takeover of the government. Residents of Antananarivo are hopeful for a better future for the country as they say that they are satisfied with the military takeover. Let's listen into what some residents have said.
À Madagascar, les vies est très évoluée sur les vies politiques. Et la jeune Madagascar très satisfait avec les militaires pris ce pouvoir. Nous attendons des nouvelles bases, nouveaux bases, nouveaux systèmes à Madagascar.
On attend beaucoup de progrès au développement de notre pays et surtout au niveau de l'éducation.
Now we move on to Kenya. Former Kenyan Prime Minister Raila Odinga has died at the age of 80 while receiving treatment at a hospital in Kerala, India. Odinga was one of Kenya's most influential political leaders, known for his decades-long fight for democracy and his role in shaping the country's modern politics. He ran for president 5 times and remained a powerful opposition voice, often calling for electoral reforms and national unity. Odinga has spent years in detention under one-party rule and later became a symbol of resistance and reform in Kenya. Now we go back to our guest discussion with Osanyin Taiwo. He's a policy and strategic implementation expert, joins us live from Abuja. Thank you, Osanyin, for staying with us. Now, how do you think this passing of Raila Odinga's will impact Kenya's political landscape, especially in terms of opposition politics?
Well, I want to commiserate with the people of Kenya towards the loss of their opposition leader, that's Raila Odinga. This is a very monumental loss to the people of Kenya, and we cannot take the fact that Odinga was actually a very great leader. We can't also take the fact that his 2 great works, aside from running for elections 5 times in Kenya, was one of the things that he's highlighted for. But we can't take the fact that he brought about and introduced the multi-party system in Kenya, and also which was enacted in 1991, and also brought about the new constitution, I think in 2001 or something like that. These are the great works Odinga brought to Kenya, and certainly it's going to be highly missed. It's going to be critically missed, and I want to commiserate with the family as well. But on the flip side, the people of Kenya, I don't think they will have someone like Odinga coming up in Kenya in a very long time, because he has made his mark and he has really created a voice for the people, and for a strong voice for the opposition as well, both as a Kenyan and also even in the African politics. Beyond that, it's also very important that it is time for leaders in Africa today to sit back and understand that life is a phase, and such things are enormous, and it's just a baseline for everything to happen, which is death. And why would reflect about his achievements, and all the things that he has done in Kenya and for the people of Kenya and for the development of the country. We must also remember that the common denominator in life is death, and African leaders must understand that they must actually perform and do very well so that after life, they are celebrated, and their impact in government, in the people and in the countries that they represent are actually loud and enough to put them in global limelight.
And we do send our condolences as well to the people of Kenya for their late Prime Minister Odinga. And what more can you tell us about his legacy and his long political career, including his efforts for electoral reforms and national unity? Do you think he had any impact on Africa in general as well?
Yes, we can't take the fact that Odinga actually was centered around very critical constitutional review and constitutional development in Kenya. And even though he was a political prisoner in Kenya, and he happened to be the face around opposition in Kenya, we can't take the fact that as things stands right now, even though Kenya is having its own challenges in terms of development, in terms of governance and whatever, but the truth remains that Kenya is well positioned in the African politics and African economic framework to actually saddle and work around good development. And that is where we can have people, great minds like Patrick Lumumba coming up today, and also tailoring some kind of opposition voices for the people of Kenya. We also have a lot of African voices today from Kenya that have also been tailored around the school of Odinga's political learning. So it's a good thing, and then it has metamorphosed to some part of Africa, and we can't even talk about the impact that he made in some of the parts of Africa, from Kenya to Lesotho to even South Africa, Nigeria, and what have you. So he lived a life of development. He lived a life of a voice, and he gave the people of Kenya that voice. And I think the African region this is going to be a very great image for the African region at large.
Thank you for sharing his legacy, shedding light on that, Taiwo. And lastly, what do you believe will be the key challenges for the opposition in Kenya moving forward without his leadership?
Well, it's going to be very critical, and I'm just hoping that the opposition gets a new leader. I'm hearing some names coming up offline and in the air to actually want to take over from the late leader. But the real question will be that would the opposition really stand the values and the tenets of Raila Odinga? This is a critical and rhetorical question that the people or the opposition leaders in Kenya need to answer, because Odinga has left a big shoe to be filled, and the question is, will it be rightly filled?
With that, I would like to thank Osani Taiwo